Hello, and thanks for joining me for a very spooky episode of Lights Out, your virtual campfire. I'm your hostess with the mostest ghosties, Sylvia Shults. I love going to conventions and other get-togethers because you never know who you're going to meet. This summer, I spent a day at the Peoria Civic Center, where I met James Brija of Ghostbusters Peoria. The group was all kitted out in Ghostbusters uniforms, and they had Ecto and several Proton backpacks out on display. So, me, being the total dork that I am, went over to their booth to introduce myself. And to drool. James wandered over to my booth later on, and we got to chatting. When he found out that I write books of true ghost stories, he very generously shared a few of his experiences with me. I knew immediately that his stories were going to be the Halloween 2018 episode of Lights Out. So, grab some spiced apple cider and a popcorn ball, or a pumpkin spice latte, I'm not here to judge. Drag a camp chair up to the virtual fire, and let's go Lights Out. Okay, I'm talking with James Brija of Ghostbusters Peoria.
Yep.
So, first of all, tell me about Ghostbusters Peoria.
Well, we have been ridiculously busy this year. This is our biggest year yet.
Cool.
But we use our costumes, props, and the Ecto to help other charities, mostly. We're also working on our own right now. We're raising money for St. Jude.
Cool.
So far this year, we've raised just us $450.
Nice.
For St. Jude. And then last year, helping other charities, I think we raised somewhere in the neighborhood of $10,000, $11,000.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
That is awesome.
Just taking part in other charities, like we do the Bloomington Normal Zombie Walk.
Uh-huh.
And that, like last year, that was like $3,500 for Crohn's and colitis.
That's excellent.
We helped my mom do hers, which is Thrill the World, on October 27th. They try and beat a world record of the most people around the world dancing the Thriller at one time.
Fun.
And that raises money, like she alone raised, I want to say, it was somewhere between the upper 2,000s and lower 3,000s, just by selling raffle tickets for prizes and stuff. And,
Okay.
And we used my house to do it, and we had her Jeep, which is all Thriller, my Ecto in the background, a bunch of people danced. That was a lot of fun.
Oh man, that sounds like a blast.
Mm-hmm. Did all kinds of different ones, so I was like,
cool.
Sunday we were in Washington by the Walmart there, helping raise money for the Children's Hospital of Illinois.
Right on.
We know this little girl, Carly. She's 8 or 9, and she's had leukemia for the past year now.
Mm.
And this kid, anytime they're like, hey, you guys want to come and do Ghostbuster stuff for Carly? Man, we're there. Because she's been given this bad hand, and she's just absolutely amazing. She's an absolute love, huge ray of sunshine. She is absolutely amazing. I tell her every time I see her, you are my hero. I could not be so upbeat with an affliction like this.
Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm.
It really makes you feel good about what you're doing.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Fantastic.
It's food for the soul, I guess you could say.
There you go. I dig that. So when we actually met at a convention a couple months ago,
mm-hmm.
you were telling me about the house that you grew up in, or your mom grew up in?
No, my dad was a baby in. Well, I told you about one of the houses I grew up in too.
Okay.
It was haunted in Joliet.
Okay, so lay some ghost stories on me.
Well, I grew up with lots of stories of the paranormal from my grandmother.
Okay.
And when my dad was a baby, they rented what they rented really was farmland up in the Lockport area.
Okay.
For whatever reason, part of the terms of their renting the land, they had to live in the farmhouse that was there. Thought it was kind of weird. And I guess the previous tenants, it had been not a very easy sort of eviction. Like when the sheriff showed up, they actually tipped over the moving truck, and I can't remember if she said it landed on part of somebody or all of somebody, but it was very tumultuous. And when they moved in there, of course it was the old coal-fired furnace and coal-fired water heater. The water heater had, just rusted and rotted out. The chicken house, the barn, and I think another outbuilding was this deep in manure. They never shoveled it out. She said when her horse first was put in the barn, the horse's back almost rubbed the rafters.
Oh.
And the barn was absolutely humongous. It had like a section that was like machine area and kind of like a workshop. And she said from the you'd go up in the loft, and it was just a huge loft where I guess the original builders, owners of the place would have shindigs and
fun
dances and stuff because it was just so enormous. And she said, she always told me, she said, before I lived in that place, I was raised Catholic, I was still very much involved in Catholicism at the time. She said, you could not possibly have convinced me there was any such thing as ghosts. Nothing. And they wound up living there for 3 years. There it is.
There's the ring.
Mike's getting washed.
Yeah.
She said after the 3 years, oh man, did it change my mind. It started with she was using a steamer to remove wallpaper.
Okay.
And the steamer she described to me was like a kind of like a big, almost like a big sideways vacuum cleaner like you'd use in the day that had a hose coming out of it, and you had your attachment, and that was it made the steam, and so she could remove the wallpaper.
Okay.
And she said she thought it had a leak because she swore she saw like a wispy bit of steamy smoke in the doorway.
Okay.
Didn't think anything of it because she was operating a steam machine.
Sure.
Just, they had a window in the upstairs that no matter how many times you'd close it, no matter what time of year, you'd go back to find it open about that much from the top. So you think, well, maybe it slid down, but she said, ancient house, everything was warped, nothing moved right. And it had started out probably as a really small house, and then it added on. She said there were doors everywhere.
Okay.
Just doors and doors and doors. And everything was so warped and crooked, half the doors you couldn't even close anymore.
Okay.
So that was kind of the start of it, didn't think much of it. And, God, where to start? There's just so many weird, this thing had everything. Sights, sounds, feelings, stuff moved, everything. They hired a farmhand named Bob Rose, and her husband's name was Bob Brija.
Okay.
And she said the best way to describe it, when you'd go up into the attic, that's where they had like a room set up for Bob Rose. You'd go up to the attic, you'd get to the top of the stairs, and it would feel like, almost like you bumped into somebody. Just like this hardness in the air, you just kind of, and continue on. After a while, they got used to it. And what was funny is a lot of the stuff that she saw happen, nobody believed her. Nobody else noticed a lot of this stuff. And she said, it's very much like I was being isolated. Everybody, oh, you're crazy, you're crazy. And I heard stories of this, so I've always been fascinated with the paranormal because it's like, well, if it's a really mean haunting, which it sounded like to me, it will try to isolate a person. That's kind of classic in a lot of ghost stories.
Absolutely.
So one night, everybody goes to bed, and the next morning, my grandmother gets up, and Bob Rose is in his underwear on the couch. Jesus, what is this? And he's, I'm not going back up there. Not going back. He wouldn't go back upstairs in the daylight.
Oh.
Because apparently what happened was he walked up the stairs that night and ran into the bump. Didn't think it. Got into bed and laid down. And all of a sudden the bed started to move like somebody got in the bed with him. And then right next to me he heard like a shot. He was down the stairs. He didn't care if he was in his underwear. I don't think I would have cared either.
No.
She said one time they heard from under the sink this weird like pinging sound. What the heck? Opened it up and there was like just out of nowhere. She couldn't figure out where they had come from, but they were bugs. I can't remember what kind of bugs they were, but they were jumping. They were like in a pan under the sink. Pink, 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 pink. That's what the noise was. Okay, old house. Occasionally, from the basement, you would hear if somebody took a metal coffee can, just placed it on the concrete, and then just kind of scooted it along. And she says you'd go down there, turn on the lights, nobody'd be there, and the furnace and water heater would be working like normal.
Okay.
Her dad, my great grandfather, he worked for, who was it? He worked for a company that they built a lot of different things, or they did this or they did that. Well, what he did was, I guess he knocked a water heater off the line. It got dented. Well, they can't sell it, so he brought it home for her.
Nice.
Brand new, coal-fired, and the furnace was nice. It had an automatic stoker. So it just kind of like a worm gear that would just slowly feed coal into it.
Oh, cool. That's useful. I've never heard of such a thing.
But she said it would make a noise, and you would recognize the noise, but that was not it.
Gotcha.
It wasn't like a dry bearing or anything like that. She said it was very much metal coffee can. I guess once in a while, it was a rare thing, but it would happen once in a while. From the attic, the stairs came down to a door into the kitchen. And you'd be sitting at the kitchen table having coffee, whatever. And she said, the way she described it was if you took a handful of wire coat hangers and just flung them down the stairs. A huge racket, just, bouncing off the walls, down the staircase, down the stairs, and into the door. Bang, 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 bang. Open up. Nothing. Absolutely nothing there.
Weird.
Let's see, what else? She said, she always told me about how the doors, most of them didn't close. And she said occasionally you'd be standing by one, and it would sound like it slammed so hard it rattled in its hinges.
Yeah.
Just bang! And it hadn't even moved.
Oh, crazy.
She described to me she had a dream one time that her dad died. And he did eventually die like 20 years later of lung cancer.
I don't think that counts as a prophetic
dream.
dream.
No. She said in the dream, she was like in a room, and there was a room above, and she could hear like somebody dragging something heavy slowly,
Sure, yeah.
In the dream, she went into that room above, and there was a casket there, and she knew her dad was in it. A little weird, not totally out of the norm. Well, a little while later, sometime later, their farmhand comes up to the house and he says, "Man, somebody's down there in the barn screwing around with me." "What are you talking about?" "Well, there's a weird noise up above the machine shed." She said, "All right, I'm sick of this BS. We're going to go down there. We're going to catch this person," because she was convinced for a long time somebody was pulling crap on them. So they go into the machining shed area and it was just like a room on one of the corners of the barn. And same sound. So she goes, "All right, when I'm real quiet, they're talking." She says, "What I'm going to do is I'm going to climb up the ladder," because it was just a ladder to get up into the loft. Straight up and down. I'm going to climb up the ladder. I'm going to stick my head up above. I'm going to yell for you, flip on the lights, and we're going to catch this SOB. She said, I climbed up the ladder. "All right, Bob." He flipped on the lights. Absolutely nothing. And that's just the sounds of the place.
Oh, man.
She said out on one of the fields, they had a ghost light.
Ooh.
It was a good ways from the house, and you had to actually kind of hike away. It was a number of acres. She never said how big it was, but it was a number of acres. So you'd go out there, and it was like a dim lantern light almost, that kind of color.
Okay.
And it would just kind of drift along one of the fence lines.
Okay, so kind of white or yellowish?
Kind of yellowish, yeah.
Okay.
And she said, you didn't see, I don't think she ever actually tried to go up to it. But she said, with a lantern, you would think you'd see the person carrying it, at least an arm of somebody carrying it.
Sure.
And you would just kind of lull along, and it was very, very frequent. She said, any time of year you could go out there and they're bobbing along.
Oh, wow.
They had In the wintertime, she said they had a feather tick, which is an extremely heavy, like comforter sort of blanket. And she said, when it was folded up, I could barely lift it by myself. And she said at night, you'd get into bed, and you'd be laying there, and this thing would be on the bed and everything, and it would slowly start to creep downward, like the whole thing. And she said, of course, your grandfather, who could sleep through a complete tornado, he never noticed this. And she said you'd wrench it back up and really kind of grab onto it, thinking it was just sliding off the bed.
Sure.
And that's when it would feel like bugs were crawling on your legs. Of course, that same reaction, she'd jump out of bed, turn on the light, nothing there. All right. And she said this would go on as long as you paid attention to it at night, and finally just screw it, I don't care, and go to sleep, and they'd quit.
Ooh.
She said they had, I think it was near the dining room, BO smell.
Ugh.
Yeah, and it was strong BO, like somebody just came out of the field and was throwing hay. And I had a friend in high school who, the whole family had a genetic trait of very strong BO. And she goes, this guy, she goes, it was worse than them.
Oh, my.
Wow. And she said you could clean and you could scrub and you could paint and the smell would go away for a while. And then it would come back even stronger.
Ugh.
I guess one year they went out to Arizona. And they went and stole a cactus, and they brought it home with them. One of the big, tall cacti.
Oh, my.
And she says, I always hated my mother-in-law, and she hated me back.
Oh.
I guess, like, when they had, like, a baby shower for her for my dad, her mother-in-law, my grandfather's mom, was, well, are you sure it's yours? Yeah, I come from... family of winners, great people.
Oh my!
When people are like,
charming.
What's your religion? I was like, some of the worst people I've ever met are Christians and Catholics, and I was related to them.
Ouch.
Anyway, they brought this cactus home, and they had it kind of like on the summer porch during warmer weather, and there was a chair by it.
Okay.
Near it. And she said, and Mumsy Dearest would always sit in that chair, and that cactus would always get her. She'd just be sitting there, sitting still, and she'd go, yeah.
Oh.
And I was like, revenge?
How close was the chair to the cactus?
She said it was close, but as long as you just kind of sat, like...
Yeah,
so,
you weren't going to get, like, attacked, unless
if
you
were
this
really
way.
kind of reaching, yeah, but she's like, it was just kind of an odd occurrence.
Weird.
Another one of those things where it's like just enough to make you think about it and notice it, but not really... register.
Yeah.
So, I guess that was killed by a freak July snowstorm.
Oh.
Just and a complete freak snowstorm, just a couple inches of snow on the ground, sudden cold spell.
In July.
In July. And that killed the poor thing. They called it, what did they call it, Matilda or Martha or something like that. They had a name for it. At one point, my grandfather tried over-the-road trucking. He was never one to hold down a job, unfortunately. Well, he spent 2 weeks away. He went out west somewhere. And he came back, and the trucking company screwed him over to where what basically happened was, yeah, they paid him, but all of his food, fuel, lodging, everything came out of his pay. So he came home with like $15.
Oh, no.
Now, granted, this is in the 60s. That's still, useful, but not when you have a family to feed.
Yeah.
So my grandmother said for a few weeks after he came home, you'd wake up in the middle of the night feeling like somebody's watching you. New. And she said, I swear to God, one night I woke up and there was a 9-foot Native American standing at the foot of our bed, arms crossed and just looking down at us.
Oh.
Hung around for a few weeks and then was gone. Like, he came back with my grandfather from West.
Oh.
Yeah. I was like, I didn't know they could follow you. And she goes, apparently.
Oh, man.
So they had at one, and this place, it definitely strikes me as, I don't know if I would call it demonic, but it was an evil haunting.
Okay.
it liked to harm animals.
Mm.
Now, like I said, my dad was a baby in his crib, 6 months old, and he started waking up in the night with night terrors.
Mm.
And the doctor was saying, he's too young to really be having these night terrors, and he's definitely too young to associate if I cry, I get fed. And my grandmother said when he would wake up crying and screaming, it was like he was terrified.
Oh.
The sound he would make. And she said I would pick him up and his tiny little body would just be shaking like a leaf.
Oh.
Something was scaring him.
Yeah.
She said she talked to her mom, another wonderful individual, about it. And she said one of the few things my mom actually suggested well for me was at night, when you put him down, take a little holy water from the church and just kind of dip your fingers in and sprinkle him with a little holy water.
Cool.
And my grandmother said when I would do that, he would laugh and it was great fun, the water sprinkles,
Sure.
The night terrors stopped.
Nice.
Of course, they were farmers. They had it's a meteorological event, but it's just weird the way it all played out. They had been trying to till this terrible soil, and finally one year they get this great looking crop of corn. They're like, oh boy, oh yeah. And she said they got a tornado. And it came through and looked like a giant's hand just twisted and ripped and pulled. And she said didn't even move a shingle on the house. And what was weird was like their neighbor, which granted farm neighbor within running distance, but
yeah.
Their neighbor, their house got down to the foundation. Gone.
Oh.
Their daughters woke up in a tree. The parents, it was weird because I'm not saying this is paranormal, but it's just part of the odd things that happen out there.
Sure.
She woke up in the bed out in a field, and I think all her clothes had been ripped off by something like that. And he had gotten struck by something across the forehead, and it completely changed his personality.
Oh. Yeah, head injuries will do that.
He used to be, before that happened, he was a really nice, gentle kind of guy, and after that he was just angry.
Oh, no.
Because that's where you live, is up there.
Yeah.
But they had animals that this thing liked to torture. It's the best way to put it. They had a calf. And, one day the calf comes back to the barn in the evening, and my grandma's like, what in the hell happened? He came back, and she said the best way to describe this is if you took a sharp something, like a sharp nail or something pointy, and just drew all over the calf with it. Just scratches all over. And she said, what the hell? She thought, well, if he got caught in the barbed wire,
right,
he'd still be there.
Yeah.
And then they checked the fences. None of the fences were damaged. No tufts of hair on them. Nothing. And it just appeared like this. And they had a horse they rescued that he had a hoof that was infected. And so they had him in a sling in a stall, and she had to take his rear hoof and soak it every day. Well, she said, it was the weirdest damn thing I've never heard of anything like this. She said she picked up his hoof one day and went to put it in the bucket, and she says, I just looked up, and right where the leg would kind of curve down like their knee,
the hocks,
in his side, she said there was a chunk of flesh missing that I could have put my hand in.
Whoa.
And she said, I'm looking at this, and I'm looking around, and she said that he was in a sling. He couldn't have moved, and even if he really moved around, no exposed nails, no sharp splintery boards, nothing and no chunk of flesh anywhere, and no blood anywhere.
No blood.
No blood at all.
Whoa.
And she said that was the weird, and she didn't have hands as big as mine, granted, but that'd be a big chunk. Which she said, I thought it would have bled everywhere. You should have shoved him. 3 little dried drops of blood off the wound. That's it.
Oh man. And was the horse in any distress?
Seemed to be okay.
Weird.
Didn't bother him. I mean, it was obviously a sore.
Yeah.
But she said, I don't know how the heck that happened, because where the sling was wouldn't have rubbed him even. She looked and checked. She could not find an explanation.
Freaky.
And if those two were bad enough, what happened to this farm cat was the worst. a stray cat started showing up on the farm, so she started giving it food and water, you know.
Sure.
It was a friendly little cat. It liked to sit on her lap and stuff. She wouldn't let it in the house, but, you know.
Yeah.
Well, one day the cat stopped showing up.
Mm.
And she thinks, well, there's coyotes out here, there's foxes. Would still put food out and call the cat and look for the cat. Well, I guess short time. I don't remember if she said it was a few days or a couple weeks. She went up into the barn loft or something.
Mm-hmm.
And she found the cat.
Oh.
In pieces.
Ooh.
She said it was completely just torn apart.
Oh no.
Just over there, just scattered, all these parts of the cat.
Ugh.
And she said, I couldn't imagine even a wild dog or a coyote getting the cat up in the loft because all they had was the straight up and down ladder.
Yeah, you mentioned the ladder.
Now, I've seen dogs climb if they're really motivated, but she said, there's easier things for coyotes to eat out here.
Yeah.
At the time. And she said that she gathered up this poor cat.
Yeah.
And nothing was really missing.
Oh.
It was still kind of a whole cat.
Oof.
So nothing had been eaten.
Right.
And once again, no blood.
Just a jigsaw puzzle of a cat, but no blood.
Exactly.
Wow.
She said there should have been blood scattered from here to there all over the floor.
Sure, yeah.
And there wasn't.
And if it happened somewhere else, which seems unlikely, how did the coyote
get all
the pieces up there?
Right.
Up the ladder.
Yeah.
There's no coyote that's that motivated.
No.
Mm.
And let me think, what else was there? This place just had all these weird sights and sounds. Like I said, all this weird stuff happened. And she said the last night we spent in the house,
mm-hmm.
it was, they were moving out the next day. Everything was packed, ready to go. Dad was a toddler by this point,
Okay.
She said it put on a show.
Oh, tell me.
Everything went absolutely nuts. She said, doors banging, covers kept moving. I think she said lights flickered. All the noises, and she said it was just this cacophony of noises. Yells and screams. Oh yeah.
Human voices now.
Yeah, she said it was just a complete, like in a horror movie. Where everything goes absolutely nuts all at once.
Whoa.
And she said it was like throwing us a goodbye party. And she said when I walked out of that door, I said, whatever you are, you stay here. And what was funny was, after they moved out, anybody they talked to in the area was like, oh man, you lived in that place? That place is haunted. You wouldn't get me to step foot in there. Thanks for warning me. And of course, like I said, I grew up with the stories of this place, and I always found it fascinating. Mm-hmm. And my dad was a concrete worker at one point.
Okay.
And development was happening in that area.
Uh-huh.
And he said the construction out there was having so many problems.
Ooh.
Just a litany of machinery breaking down, nothing going right. They were like, months behind schedule on their build.
Wow. So they were building on that land?
Yeah.
Oh.
My grandmother and I actually went back up there.
Uh-huh.
She says, I'll show you where the farmhouse was. All right. Cool. Yeah. We'll get up there. I think it's off of, I want to say Cedar Road in Lockport.
Okay.
And of course, Lockport's just, like most towns. And this is where it gets interesting for me. This really kind of makes that connection for me is you've got the main road right along here, and the owner's house that they rented it from sits here, and like the farm site was here.
Okay.
So you can see they were neighbors basically. That house is still there.
Okay. And
there's a subdivision on this side of the road and on this side of the road. But this is where it gets weird to me. Where the house, barn, and like machine shed or chicken coop, something like that, all stood is an empty lot.
Ooh.
Just behind that lot is all these, subdivision homes and everything, and like the barn sits on what would be like you got your main road and you've got the inroad to the subdivision. The barn would have sat on the corner.
Okay.
The house was kind of in the middle. You had another building back here, and then there's the neighbor's house. But it's an empty lot. It's a bare lot.
Ooh.
For sale.
People are just unconsciously staying away from it.
Mm-hmm. Nobody built on the lot. And like I said, it's the weirdest thing because it goes back so far. Like, it's not quite a block.
Okay.
It's a little smaller than that, maybe a 3/4, half a block in depth. And there's houses right there, all with the backs of the houses facing this lot.
Oh.
And I looked at that and I'm like, this is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Why?
Another unconscious gesture.
And like I said, there's houses on the other side of the road, there are houses there, the houses down there, and you're standing on this empty lot.
Interesting.
And I was a member of a ghost hunting group up in Joliet after I checked the place out. So I told them these stories of the place. So we're like, hey, let's go out there and investigate. Sure. We go out there, and nothing really out of the ordinary happened. I don't think we got any EVPs.
You were just in the empty lot at this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we just got some dust and photographs. Nothing really. It was dormant, I guess. Except, I saw, and I'm pretty sure somebody else saw, a phantom rabbit. And when I say a phantom rabbit, it was like somebody walking along and they spooked a rabbit.
Okay.
And started to run.
Okay.
So we both, and followed it with our flashlights, watching the movement.
Yeah.
And as it ran along, it looked like it kind of went like that and disappeared.
Whoa.
Dove in a rabbit hole, right?
Yeah.
No hole. like did a tumble roll sort of thing and just.
Oh.
And it just, and we were looking. We had the flashlights out and we're all scouring. A couple other people were we're here closer to the neighbor's house. There, a couple of people were down by the barn. Like, what? You're not gonna believe this. You are not gonna believe this. And had the same. It looked kind of like a rabbit. If you've ever walked in the woods and you suddenly spook one. Yeah. You don't see it until all of a sudden it's running and you recognize the movement.
Sure.
Oh, that's a rabbit. That's exactly what it looked like. Gone. And I was like, all right, that was creepy. And one time, my grandmother and I went up there, and I was taking pictures, and we were doing EVPs and everything. Never got anything, but the whole time she was at her knees. Like, we parked on the side road, and she was having a hard time just, walking past the barn site. And she was pointing stuff out to me and everything, but she was like, I don't like being here. Just that feeling of nope. And it freaked us out. And we get back down home. It was just a day trip and back. We get back down here. We lived on Spring Lake. And I wake up to my bed shaking. And I was like, what the heck? So I get up and I go in the hallway and she's right there. That scared the heck out of me. Yeah. And she goes, were you just in my room shaking my bed? I said, no. I said, oh my God, it followed us. And it was the earthquake of the New Madrid fault, that 2.2.
Yes.
Same night, but at first we were just like, oh no. It followed us home.
Sometimes some of the debunkings are as interesting as if it really happened.
Yeah, it's a funny story because it's like you're on pins and needles thinking, oh God, how do I get rid of this?
I hope you guys enjoyed James's stories as much as I did. I know some of that stuff gave me some serious goosebumps, and I truly hope it did the same for you. If you'd like to support the charity work done by Ghostbusters Peoria, just look them up on Facebook to find out what they're up to. If you're listening to this in the Peoria area, the group will be doing 2 Trunk or Treat events on October 28th, one at the Creve Coeur Christian Church on Thorncrest in Creve Coeur, and one in Elmwood on the Square. And on Sunday, November 11th, they'll be doing a benefit for Carly at the Avanti's Dome in Pekin from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So if James's mention of little Carly grabbed you, show Ghostbusters Peoria some love and help out several good causes. On the next episode, we'll go back to Nevada for a visit to haunted Bonnie Springs Ranch. Join us then for another spooky episode of Lights Out.